When people ask me how my mental health is doing as we approach the final episodes, I'm like,
oh my god, so good.
From tragic breakups, creepy grandpa, and telling your boss to eat Episode 209 is a huge setup in what is to be an explosive finale. Do we finally know who this guy is? Is Helena planning to switch bodies with Gemma? And could a 1960s episode of The Twilight Zone reveal what Severance is all about? Trust me, you're going to want to stick around till the end of the video for that. But before we get there, make sure to like and subscribe. We just hit 750,000 subscribers, which means we get a musical dance experience. And I'm choosing this as my song.
Marcus be having sex all the time with not his wife, but it's fine, not a crime.
We begin with Helena Egan swimming laps in what I can only assume is the home of Jame Egan, a home which is conveniently right across from Lumon headquarters as seen here by the infamous Lumon water tower. It's kind of interesting that Helena is swimming here considering a few episodes ago she nearly drowned to death. You'll notice the director pays close attention to this swimming pace clock, a metaphor for the unrelenting nature of time. It goes on in a never-ending loop, just like Helly is trapped in a never-ending loop of work. No matter how hard she tries to break free, she always finds herself back at her desk, just like a swimmer who has to hit the wall and start another lap. We see Helly has prepared herself for work wearing her signature Lumon blue, the color of the Innie world, which I thought was rather interesting since we can see blue all over James's office like here and here. As James says, today is a momentous day. It is the day Cold Harbor is to be completed, a day which Drummond says will be Lumon's finest. And I hope you like an egg party.
Yeah, the egg bar is coveted as
Helly has brought a delicious egg breakfast, but even the simple task of eating it isn't good enough for Jame.
We should take them raw.
We learned on Helena's first day of work that raw eggs were his favorite breakfast.
You know, he used to drink 3 raw eggs and milk each morning. His favorite breakfast.
This was a test to see if the severance procedure really worked.
Question 4. What is Mr. Egan's favorite breakfast?
Check out this decorative plate. It appears to be a man held down by 2 women, one in a blue outfit and the other in red. The man here is Mark, held down by Helly in blue, the Innie, and Helena in red, the Outie. But notice the black hats symbolizing Lumon's control over them, similar to the black key cards and black bandages associated with Lumon management. Heck, every time we see Jame, the CEO of Lumon, he's always wearing black. Now take a look at this egg being severed, just like our Innie's brains. The egg can also symbolize fertility, and if you've seen some of my previous videos, you'll know I think Helena is pregnant. Helena informs her father that Mr. Bailiff is being seen to, this of course being Irv. While sneaking into his house, Drummond found that Irv was investigating Lumon, and we all know that's a big no-no. The last time we saw Drummond, he was looking at Burt Goodman's name, a name he would recognize considering Burt used to work at Lumon. We knew of Burt as this kind, intelligent head of optics and design, but episode 209 reveals his dark past. Burt was essentially a hitman for Lumon, although he refers to himself as a quote-unquote driver. He would drive people into the middle of the woods, at which point his Innie would take over and commit the murder. This allowed Burt's Outie to live a life free of the trauma of having killed countless people, and for his soul to be absolved of all sin. We learned at Burt's dinner party that the official stance of the church is that a severed person has 2 souls, so while one can burn in hell, the other can go to heaven. This also explains the time discrepancy. Burt's partner Field states that Burt was severed 20 years ago, but that's not possible since the first Severance office opened only 12. If what Field says was true, that means Lumon was conducting Severance years before any of its offices opened, and it was using it for nefarious purposes. For 8 years, Burt did Lumon's dirty work, at which point I think his hitman chip was retired and a new one was put in where Burt was given a cushy job in O&D. This is the Burt we see all throughout season 1. This revelation also gives us insight into why Cobel walked away from Helena in episode 203. Notice how the camera and Cobel pay close attention to this driver. Cobel would know this guy is the modern day version of Hitman Burt, meaning he's also severed. So when she saw him, she said, "No thanks, I'm gonna take my chances elsewhere." everywhere. The episode does a brilliant job leading us to believe Burt is taking Irv to be shot.
Is that what today is?
In fact, that's what Lumon has tasked him to do, and why Helena said Mr. Bailiff is being taken care of. Instead, Burt has taken Irv to the train station, giving him a one-way ticket and tasking him to get off at a random stop and not tell him where. Irv can never come back to Kier. The tragedy of the situation is that for the first time in his life, Irv has felt love, but it can't last. Burt tells him they can't be together. It would put both their lives in jeopardy. And I think Burt allowing Irv to live is his own way of seeking redemption for a life of participating in Lumon's crimes. Burt's last words to Irv are,
Bon voyage.
which is the same thing his outie said to his Innie in his retirement video.
Bon voyage.
The last we see of Irv, he's on a train with his dog Radar heading off into the sunset. Now we have to ask ourselves, is this the end of both Irv and Burt as characters in the show? On the one hand, their stories could end right here, but I'm not entirely sure that's what's going to happen. I have a feeling season 3 is really going to expand the scope of the show. I mean, aside from Salt's Neck, we haven't really gotten a good picture of what the world is like beyond Kier. I could totally see a side story of Irv in a new town where we really get to see what life is like in this Lumon world. John Turturro and Christopher Walken are also big draws to the show, so unless their contracts have ended, I'd like to see them back. Well, it looks like Miss Huang completed her Wintertide Fellowship, just like Miss Cobel some decades ago. You'll notice a few interesting differences, like the Lumon logo and Year of Vision as opposed to Cobel's Year of Wiles, both of these being core Lumon principles. But the thing I found most interesting was Miss Huang's first name, Eustace. First, this is typically a male name and is usually spelled with an A. Perhaps the most famous Eustace is Saint Eustace, who was separated from his family and forced into exile, kinda like Miss Huang is being sent away from her family to the remote Gunnel Egan Empathy Center in Svalbard. Svalbard is an insanely remote island that can be found between Norway and the North Pole. It's kind of funny Lumon decided to put their empathy center here, and it shows how much they really value it. And I don't believe we've heard of Gunnel Egan before. The name Gunnel means battle maiden, and I love how we keep learning more about weird Egans like we did with Dieter in episode 4. It's clear that Milchick wants Miss Huang gone as soon as possible. It was her who anonymously reported to management about his use of big words and inappropriate placement of paperclips, which were outlined in his performance review. To add insult to injury, he makes her destroy her beloved toy, stating that the completion of the fellowship requires a material sacrifice. No doubt a sadistic metaphor for the end of her childhood. I wonder what Cobel had to give up. It's also interesting we have Kier swimming here, and the first scene is Helena doing the same. And did anyone else think it was kind of sad to have her picked up in a shuttle bus like her parents weren't there?
Bye, bitch.
The theme of abandonment is all the more prevalent in Dylan's storyline. Gretchen discloses to her husband her kiss with his Innie, something that he isn't too happy about. In this YouTuber's humble opinion, it's totally cheating. For Gretchen, Innie Dylan reminded her of who he used to be, not this apathetic couch potato who needs instructions on how to make store-bought cookies. He's so frustrated that he threatens to quit, however, as we'll soon find out, his Innie will do it for him. Not only does Gretchen have to disclose her cheating to Dylan, but she's got to break up with his Innie too. Notice her sweater dotted with red flowers like those tended to by Gemma in episode 207, a symbol of love. And honestly, my heart bled for this guy.
Gretchen, my life started when you came here.
You can actually pinpoint the second when his heart rips in half. And now.
This is the only time he's felt love, and it's so painful that it leads him to quit. And when I say quit here, it means the end of his entire existence. It's tantamount to death. In one of my favorite shots of the episode, Dylan is framed in front of the painting Kier Pardons His Betrayers, where his head is positioned on the chopping block. As soon as he gets in the elevator, it's over. On his resignation form, he checks off every option, including guilt, shame, and loneliness, and when he gets into that elevator, it's over. This is all rather ironic considering the same argument Dylan used to keep Irv from leaving in episode 201 is the same argument Helly uses to try to get Dylan to stay. They need to stay to find out what lies at the bottom of the export hallway. Now, is this the end of Innie Dylan? I highly doubt it. Lumon will undoubtedly find a way to bring him back, and we saw how tough it was for Outie Dillon to last without a job. But who's to say there will even be an MDR department after the completion of Cold Harbor? I also think this won't be the last we see of Gretchen. Her being a 911 dispatcher is such an interesting choice that could easily be woven into the story, with characters falling unconscious, nearly drowning to death, and let's not forget the occasional flying intercom. Who knows when she could be called with a Lumon emergency. I also spent way more time than I wish to admit trying to figure out what this cartoon is. The closest I got was a 1960s Christian show called Jot the Dot, but if any of you can confirm or deny this, let me know in the comments. I absolutely love this shot of Lumon showing off the building's use of balance and symmetry.
Isn't that what Lumon's all about?
Balance?
This might be a bit of a stretch, but the top of the building looks like parts of a Severance chip. With a brief cameo this episode is Dr. Mauer. We can see him with a band-aid, a result of the injury he sustained in Gemma's escape attempt. I love how it's black instead of Innie blue. He's staring at Gemma. In episode 207, he was told once Cold Harbor is complete, he will have to say goodbye, and I got the feeling he's a little obsessed with her. I want to take a moment and point out the ID number here on the Cold Harbor case file. It's the same number as Helly's that we saw in episode 108. Why would her number be associated with Cold Harbor? Later in the episode, Jame Egan visits Helly at MDR. Considering the previous shot was of the export elevator hallway with the red arrow pointing down, we can assume he just came up from the test floor. He already knows about Cold Harbor, and that likely means he knows about Gemma, but something down there has made him very upset, telling Helly, quote,
You tricked me.
And of course, Helly has no idea what he's talking about. And did anyone else think it was weird he refers to her as Helly, not Helena? Although that might just be his pet name for her. Whatever it is, I think this will be tied to some major twist in the finale. With Helly's ID the same as Cold Harbor's, I wonder if Helena is secretly planning to escape in Gemma's body. It's a pretty insane theory that would require the ability to transfer one's consciousness into another. While this technology might not be there, the motive for Helena to escape Lumon certainly is. She lives under the tyrannical rule of her father, was forced to go back to a work environment where she was nearly killed twice, and furthermore, she's developed these feelings towards Mark. We've seen her obsessively watch the security camera footage of Helly making out with him, she tricks him into having sex with her, and then stalks him at an Asian restaurant. How messed up would it be if she took over the body of his lover's wife? Another possibility is that there is another person living on the test floor that Jame discovered. In episode 207, we can see what appears to be an identical room across from Gemma's. It doesn't have a file name like the others. Is this simply an empty room, or does someone live there? Or what if Helena severed her brain more than once? That way she could sever herself from all the crap she has to deal with from her father. Whatever happens, the show is definitely setting us up for Helly to make her way to that export hallway and go down to the test floor. She was spending more time memorizing the directions on how to get there than me trying to remember Mortal Kombat fatalities. The question is, what is she going to do when she gets there, and will anything happen with her chip when she descends? We know Gemma's chip is programmed to switch in this elevator, but will anything happen to Helly? Meanwhile, Mark and Devin meet up with Cobel, who I love is still driving Hampton's truck. It actually works out perfectly since it'll later be used to smuggle Mark in to the Damona birthing cottages. Damona is a really odd name for a place to give birth, considering it's very close to demon. In Hebrew, Damona spelled with an E means evil, and the Greek name Desdemona means misuse of power, all of which can be attributed to Lumon. Cobel tells Mark that if he completes Cold Harbor, Gemma is dead. Now this could mean two things. It could mean a literal death in that her body and mind are gone, or it could mean the death of Gemma as he knows it, meaning her body will still be there, but her memory might be wiped clean. This is similar to when Dylan equates Milchick's firing of Irv as murder. Mark is rightfully uneasy trusting Cobel, the woman who is secretly his boss and knew that Gemma was alive this whole time, but he really has no other choice. She's their only way to get Gemma back. I also thought their meeting location was really interesting. It's near these bluffs, similar to those found in the Dieter National Park, as well as the intro credits. And if you've been following my videos for some time, you'll know I think Gemma's car skidded off the road and off one of these bluffs, as we'll see this mysterious car sinking into the water in the credits. Milchick calls relentlessly. As Drummond reminds him, this was to be a monumentous day, but the only one who can finish Cold Harbor is now MIA. Throughout the season, we've seen Milchick's tough tough demeanor crack, starting with his failures as the new department manager, his less than stellar performance review, and add the psychological effect of those weird Kier paintings. It's no wonder he eventually cracks at Mr. Drummond. And I gotta side with Milchick here. It's not his fault Mark didn't show up to work. Anything that happens to Mark outside the office falls to Drummond. It's been hinted that Lumon has access to security cameras all over Kier, and we know that Drummond has followed Mark on at least one occasion. It's kind of ironic when Drummond makes Milchick repeat the line, "I'm sorry," over and over again, because that's what Milchick made the Innies do when they misbehaved in the break room. I can't help but think Milchick will face some sort of reprimand for this outburst. Probably not now, since they're so close to completing Cold Harbor. Mark ends up telling Milchick that he's taking the day off, promising him that he will be in tomorrow. With Mark linking up with Cobel, who created Severance, I wonder if she'll be able to make changes to his chip. For example, could she instigate a Glasgow block allowing Outie Mark to operate on the severed floor? We get this short moment with Milchick breaking down after his call with Mark as he stares at a picture of an iceberg. He's been under such tremendous stress and almost never shows his real emotions. Milchick in this way is like the iceberg. We only see a portion of who he really is. Upon making their way to the birthing cottages, we learn some particularly nefarious things about Jame Egan. Devon masquerades as, quote, one of James's, implying she was impregnated by him. You'll even see her holding her stomach. And the fact Cobel uses the phrase one of suggests there have been many such women brought here. Are they brought here to get an abortion, or are they here to get severed so they forget they've given birth in the first place? This could mean Jame has dozens of bastard children. James's promiscuity also calls into question if he did anything sexual with Cobel. Cobel would have had a close relationship with Jame, not only being a Wintertide fellow, but bringing to him the schematics for Severance. It's been hinted that Cobel herself was once severed. How insane would it be if she was severed, whether willing or unwillingly, to forget the birth of a bastard child with Jame Egan? If she had a child as a teen, could that child be Mark? It might explain her obsession with him, keeping an eye on him when she lived next door, and even doing mom things like baking him cookies, something she never would have gotten the chance to do if she gave the child up. For this theory to work, Mark and Devon, if they are biologically related, would not know they were adopted. It also adds an extra WTF because that would make Mark and Helly half-siblings, and considering the two of them hooked up, well, we got ourselves a bit of a Star Wars situation. The title of this episode is The After Hours, which is the same title of a 1960 episode of The Twilight Zone, a show which creator Ben Stiller says is one of Severance's biggest inspirations. In it, we have a woman named Miss Marcia White visiting a department store looking to purchase a thimble for her mother.
Miss Marcia White, 9th floor, specialties department. I'm looking for a gold thimble.
Miss Marcia White on the 9th floor, specialties department. Looking for a gold thimble.
Throughout her journey, she realizes she's actually one of the store's mannequins who was given 1 month to experience what it's like to live in the real world. So how does this relate to Severance? Well, there are a few insane theories. The first is that Gemma had always been severed and never knew it, perhaps even sent out into the world as a sort of test subject. This would mean the Gemma that met Mark at Gans College those years ago isn't the real original Gemma, and like Miss Marcia White from the Twilight Zone, she does not realize who her true self is. Thus, Lumon had to devise this elaborate car crash scheme to bring her back. Second, and this is where things get really weird, is that this all has something to do with the revolving.
And one day, you will sit with me at my revolving.
In the Twilight Zone episode, each of the mannequins take turns living life in the real world. In other words, they revolve over and over again, so they all get to experience what it's like to live. What if this is what's happening with the Egan family, with each member taking a turn to live outside? In essence, this creates some sort of immortality. We know that Lumon has been testing Gemma's brain so that it can be severed multiple times. Imagine if the consciousness of multiple individuals could be uploaded to one person. You could get the ultimate Egan, one person with the consciousness of the entire family. If this theory is even remotely true, it would mean the board, who we never have seen before, is actually a motherboard, where the consciousnesses of past Egans reside without a physical form. They're kind of in a stasis, like literal mannequins waiting to be reborn. I also don't think it's a coincidence that the episode that follows the After Hours in the Twilight Zone is called The Mighty Casey. Now get this, The Mighty Casey is all about a baseball pitcher who gets into an accident where it's revealed that he is actually a robot. To make him appear more human, he's given a human heart so he can feel what it's like to have human emotions. Miss Casey's journey is kind of the opposite. She also gets into an accident but is given a piece of robotic tech, the Severance chip, where she appears more robotic. Aside from the two of them acting like robots, both of them are controlled by external forces, i.e. the Baseball League for the Mighty Casey and Lumon for Miss Casey. Both also deal with questions of what it means to be human and how institutions treat individuals as tools rather than people. Mark is eventually brought to the cottage, which acts similarly to the Lumon elevator, engaging his Innie. He'll pass this picture of Keir Egan in a military outfit. In a line that's difficult to hear in the season 1 finale, Natalie tells the crowd that Keir Egan was a military doctor who, quote, saw humans in agony and decided we could do better. This all points to the theory that Lumon's end goal is to eliminate all pain. That's why Jame is severed during times of trauma. The picture is also a subtle reminder that Lumon is always watching. The episode ends with Mark's confrontation with Cobel. I believe it is here that Mark will learn everything about Cold Harbor and will come up with a way to save Gemma. Remember, he promised Milchick that he'll be returning to work tomorrow. To me, this episode felt like a setup for an explosive finale. If it's anything like season 1's, we are in for some shocking reveals that will totally change where the season goes, and I hope you'll stick with me as we head into the finale. But now I turn it over to you. What do you think will happen next? I want to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, and for more bad takes you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember,
I love you.